The year is 1260 AD. Across the vast Eurasian landmass, an empire of unprecedented scale cast its long shadow. From the steppes of Mongolia, a force had emerged in the early 13th century under the charismatic leadership of Temujin, later known as Genghis Khan. This was the Mongol Empire, a name that struck terror into the hearts of sultans, emperors, and kings alike. Their military machine, a ruthless confluence of discipline, strategic brilliance, and unparalleled mobility, had swept across China, Central Asia, Persia, and into Eastern Europe. Kiev, Budapest, Krakow, all had fallen. The Khwarezmian Empire, a formidable Muslim power, was utterly annihilated in the 1220s. Baghdad, the glittering jewel of the Abbasid Caliphate for half a millennium, was sacked with unimaginable brutality in 1258, bringing an end to 500 years of Abbasid rule and extinguishing the intellectual and cultural heart of Islam. Under Manka Khan, Genghis's grandson, the Mongol Empire reached its zenith. His younger brother, Hulagu Khan, was tasked with the expansion into the Middle East. Hulagu's campaign, beginning in 1253, was relentless. He commanded a massive army, estimated at up to 150,000 men, a significant portion of the Mongol Empire's total military strength. His objective was clear: consolidate Mongol power in Persia, and then march westwards to conquer the Ayyubid Sultanate, an Islamic dynasty controlling Egypt and Syria. The fall of Baghdad was a catastrophic blow, not just militarily but psychologically. It sent ripples of fear throughout the Islamic world and beyond. The Mongols seemed invincible. Their tactics were simple yet devastating: offer terms of surrender if refused, annihilate the population, leaving a terrifying example for the next city. This strategy worked flawlessly. City after city capitulated. Following the sacking of Baghdad, Hulagu continued his westward advance. In 1259 he invaded Syria, then part of the Ayyubid Sultanate. Aleppo fell in January 1260, followed by Damascus in March. Local rulers, recognizing the futility of resistance, often surrendered without a fight. The Ayyubid emir of Damascus, and Nasir Yusuf, fled from the city and sought refuge in Egypt. The Mongol advance was so swift and terrifying that it seemed nothing could halt the tide. Hulagu installed a Christian governor, Kitbuka Noyan, a Naiman Christian general, to administer Syria, and preparations were made for a full invasion of Egypt. However, a critical event occurred in distant Mongolia. In August 1259, Manka Khan died during a campaign in Sichuan, China. This was the signal for a power struggle, a Kurultai, to determine the next great Khan. Hulagu, as a prominent member of the Golden Family, was expected to return to Mongolia to participate in this succession debate, or at the very least, observe it from Persia as various factions vied for power. Therefore, in the spring of 1260, Hulagu withdrew the bulk of his forces from Syria, taking perhaps 130,000 men with him, leaving behind a relatively small contingent under Kitbuka Noyan. Modern estimates suggest Kitbuka's force numbered between 10,000 and 20,000 men, though some historical accounts inflate this figure. These men were primarily Mongol, but also included contingents from Georgia, Armenia, and the Seljuks of Rum, all vassals of the Mongol Empire. Kitbuka's orders were to hold Syria and prepare the ground for Hulagu's eventual return and the subsequent invasion of Egypt. Meanwhile, Egypt was under the rule of the Mamluks. The Mamluks were a unique military caste, originally slave soldiers, primarily of Turkic, Kipchak, and Circassian origin, who had been purchased, trained, and converted to Islam. They formed the backbone of the Ayyubid army. In 1250, during the Seventh Crusade, the Mamluks, under their leader Aybak, had decisively defeated King Louis IX of France at the Battle of Farisker. Shortly after, they staged a coup, overthrowing the Ayyubid dynasty and establishing their own sultanate in Egypt, ushering in the Bahri Mamluk dynasty. This was a new, resilient, and fiercely independent military power. At this crucial juncture, the Mamluk Sultan in Egypt was Saif ad-Din Qutuz, also a former Mamluk slave soldier. Qutuz assumed power in 1259 amidst internal turmoil and the looming existential threat of the Mongols. He understood the gravity of the situation. Unlike many other rulers who had crumbled before the Mongol onslaught, Qutuz recognized that appeasement, or retreat would lead only to annihilation. He received an audacious ultimatum from Kitbuka: surrender or face destruction. The Mongol envoys delivered this message with their usual arrogance, demanding immediate capitulation. Kutuz's response was swift and brutal. He executed the Mongol ambassadors and displayed their heads on the gates of Cairo. This was an act of defiance virtually unheard of in encounters with the Mongols. It signaled a clear intention to fight, not surrender. Kutuz then took an extraordinary step. He forged an alliance with Baybars, a brilliant general and Mamluk emir who had previously been exiled due to political jealousies. Baybars, a veteran of the battles against the Crusaders and an experienced commander, had a profound understanding of military strategy. His return and reconciliation with Kutuz cemented Mamluk unity at a critical time. Baybars would prove instrumental in the upcoming confrontation. In late July 1260, Kutuz, leading the main Mamluk army, marched out of Cairo. His forces included not only the elite Mamluk heavy cavalry, but also a significant number of Ayyubid Syrian troops who had fled to Egypt, as well as Bedouin irregulars. The Mamluks were renowned for their rigorous training, their discipline, and their use of composite bows and heavy swords. Their cavalry tactics were sophisticated, often involving feigned retreats and flanking maneuvers. They were, in essence, the Islamic world's answer to the Mongol cavalry, with a similar emphasis on horsemanship and archery. The Mamluk army, numbering perhaps 20,000 to 30,000 men, marched north. They cleverly used the Palestinian coast to avoid a direct frontal engagement in the open desert, allowing for resupply and minimizing the risk of Mongol reconnaissance. They traversed the Sinai Peninsula and moved through Palestine, passing Acre, a Crusader stronghold. The Crusaders, despite having faced the Mamluks in numerous battles, adopted a position of neutrality, a decision that proved strategically foolish in the long run. They allowed the Mamluks to pass through their territory and even resupply, effectively facilitating their march against the Mongols, whom the Crusaders had also recently fought against in Syria with limited success. This neutrality, born of short-sighted self-interest and lingering animosity towards the Mamluks, prevented a united front against the Mongols that might have otherwise dramatically altered the balance of power in the Levant. The two armies finally met on September 3, 1260, at a place called Ein Jalut, the Spring of Goliath, in the Jezreel Valley, in what is today northern Israel. This historical battlefield was overlooked by Mount Gilboa, a site already steeped in ancient legend. The terrain itself was strategically significant, a more enclosed valley with natural defiles which would mitigate the Mongol advantage in open-field cavalry charges and flanking movements compared to the vast open steppes. Kutuz, knowing the fearsome reputation of the Mongol cavalry, deployed his army with careful planning. He placed a strong vanguard, led by Baybars, at the front, hidden amongst the dense vegetation of the valley. The main Mamluk force was positioned behind in reserve. The goal was to draw the Mongols into the valley, then spring a trap. Kitbuka, perhaps overconfident after years of Mongol victories or underestimating the Mamluk resolve, did not appear to conduct thorough reconnaissance. He led his Mongol force directly into the valley. The battle began with Baybar's vanguard engaging the Mongol rearguard, drawing them further into the trap. The initial skirmishes were fierce. The Mongols, true to their reputation, fought with incredible ferocity and skill. They executed their characteristic tulugma or encirclement maneuver, attempting to envelop the Mamluk wings. At one point, the Mongol attack was so fierce that the Mamluk left flank began to buckle. The pressure was immense. Eyewitness accounts suggest that the Mamluks were on the verge of breaking. It was at this critical juncture that Sultan Kutuz himself, casting off his helmet and shouting, "O Islam! O God, grant thy servant Kutuz victory against the Tatars," plunged into the thick of the fighting. His personal bravery and leadership rallied his wavering troops. This act of courage was pivotal, galvanizing his men and reaffirming their commitment to the fight. The battle then turned into a brutal close-quarters melee. The Mamluks, particularly their heavy cavalry, proved to be more than a match for the Mongols in this confined space. Their training, their heavier armor, and their superior weaponry for close combat began to tell. The Mamluk horse archers, equally skilled as their Mongol counterparts, matched shot for shot. As the Mongols pressed their attack, The Mamluk reserves emerged from their hidden positions, effectively flanking the Mongol forces. The encirclement maneuver that the Mongols so often used against their enemies was now being turned against them. Kitbuka, recognizing the dire situation, fought valiantly. He held his ground with his core Mongol troops, refusing to flee. He was eventually captured, still fighting, and brought before Sultan Qutuz. According to historical accounts, Kitbuka was offered mercy if he converted to Islam, but he defiantly refused, predicting Qutuz's demise and the return of the Mongol wrath. Qutuz, after a brief exchange, ordered Kitbuka's execution. His death was a tremendous blow to Mongol morale. With Kitbuka dead and their forces encircled, the remaining Mongol army largely disintegrated. Many were killed during the rout, and those who tried to escape were mercilessly hunted down by the triumphant Mamluks. Ain Jalut was not just a victory, it was a devastating defeat for the Mongols, a complete reversal of fortunes. It shattered the myth of Mongol invincibility that had held sway for over 4 decades. The immediate consequences were profound. The Mamluks rapidly reclaimed Damascus and the rest of Syria from Mongol control within weeks. For the first time in their history, the Mongols were decisively defeated in a pitched battle fought in open terrain against a non-Chinese opponent. This victory saved Egypt, and by extension the remainder of the Islamic world, from Mongol conquest. Had Egypt fallen, it's conceivable that the Mongol advance might have continued into North Africa, and potentially even to more distant parts of Europe. As the Mamluks were the last significant land-based power capable of resisting them, the long-term impact of Ain Jalut was even more far-reaching. It altered the geopolitical map of the Middle East and set the stage for subsequent Mamluk-Ilkhanid conflicts. Hulagu, upon hearing of the defeat and the death of Hai's trusted general Kitbuka, was enraged. He eventually returned to Persia but was unable to avenge Ain Jalut effectively. A combination of internal strife within the Mongol Empire, the succession dispute continued, leading to the fragmentation of the empire into separate khanates, the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Golden Horde in Russia, and the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the growing strength of the Mamluk Sultanate prevented any decisive Mongol resurgence in the Levant. The Mongol Ilkhanate and the Mamluks would clash repeatedly over the next decades, but the Mamluks always held their ground, cementing their control over Syria and Palestine. The Battle of Ain Jalut was unique not only for its outcome but also for the circumstances surrounding it. The timing of Mancha Khan's death and Hulagu's subsequent withdrawal was a crucial factor, denying Kitbuka the full force of the Mongol war machine. However, this does not diminish the Mamluk achievement. They fought a superior technological and tactical foe and emerged victorious through a combination of brilliant strategy, resolute leadership, and unparalleled martial prowess. They were one of the few contemporary powers capable of matching the Mongols in cavalry warfare and discipline. Their heavy cavalry, their composite bows, and their tactical flexibility proved instrumental. Historical accounts of Ain Jalut, particularly from chroniclers like Rashid al-Din Hamadani and Abu Shama, emphasize the brutality and significance of the clash. It wasn't just a battle, it was a turning point, a psychological victory that resonated across continents. While the Mongols continued to rule massive territories, their aura of invincibility was irrevocably broken at the Spring of Goliath. It was here that history erased the notion that the Mongol tide was unstoppable, proving that even the most formidable empire could be humbled by those who dared to stand against them. The Mamluks, an empire built on the very foundation of military might, had met the ultimate test and emerged as the improbable saviors of a civilization on the brink. This battle is a testament to the fact that even seemingly insurmountable odds can be overcome with courage, strategy, and unwavering determination. The Mamluk Sultanate, forged in the fires of conflict, would go on to rule Egypt and Syria for another 250 years, becoming a dominant power in the Middle East, thanks in no small part to their legendary stand at Ain Jalut. The name of Kitbuka and his formidable Mongol host, once instruments of terror, became synonymous with defeat, a rare word in the Mongol lexicon, uttered only after their fateful encounter with them. The legacy of Ain Jalut is not just about military tactics, it's about resilience, the defiance of subjugation, and the unexpected turn of fate that can reshape the course of human history. It reminds us that no empire, however vast or powerful, is truly eternal or invincible. The very land where David once fought Goliath bore witness to another epic struggle, where a new generation of warriors stepped forward to confront the seemingly unstoppable, and in doing so, changed the world forever. The impact of this single battle reverberated across the medieval world, reinforcing the strategic importance of Egypt and shaping the future of the Middle East for centuries to come. The Mongol dream of a universal empire and control of North Africa was decisively crushed on that fateful day in 1260. The Mamluks had not merely won a battle, they had preserved a civilization,